Shabbos. I woke up with a nigun in my head. A nigun is a melody. Nigun. Nigun is Yiddish from nigun. Hebrew means melody. It goes like this. God, we need to turn that down just a little. Again. We'll do it again, but the next part. Beginning. We'll do it again later. Putting on talis, lehita tefet tzitzit. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvah b'tzvah lehita tefet tzitzit. Rising Birchot HaShachar, found on pages 103 and 104 in the Siddur, pages 103 and 104 in the Siddur. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher natan lasech v'ivina lavchin ben yom uvein layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Malbish Arumim. 104. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Matir Asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Zokeh Kifufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Rokah Eretz al Hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasa likol sarki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Oter Yisrael b'tif'ara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten layoev koach. Unenu ayom l'chol yom l'cheinu chesed rachamim b'einech v'nechol ro'enu v'tigmalenu chasedim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasedim tovim lamo Yisrael. We are seated, turning to the Psalm for Shabbat on page 112. Psalm for Shabbos, page 112. Mizmor shir liyom ha-Shabbat, togodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, lagid baboker chasdecha, ve'emunatcha balelot, alei asov, alei navel, alei higayon bechinor, mizmor shir liyom ha-Shabbat, togodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Ki simach Adonai b'falecha, b'maseh yodecha aranen, magalu masecha Adonai mod, amaku machshabotecha. Mizmor shir liyom ha-Shabbat, togodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. How wonderful are your works, Adonai! How subtle your designs! The arrogant do not understand. The fool does not comprehend this. The wicked flourish like grass, and every evildoer blossoms only to be destroyed forever. But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high, anointed it with fresh oil. As my enemies gather against me, ears listen. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming, O dinuvum beseva desheni banim you, lagi kisharno etzurvlo tabo. The psalm preparing us for Rosh Hashanah in silence on page 113. Luleihem antiot betubarnoi beretz chaim, kavei el Adonai, chazak yamitzvech l'kavei el Adonai. On page 122, Baruch Sha'amar. Baruch Sha'amar v'hayalam, Baruch Hu, Baruch Oseh v'Reshit, Baruch Omer v'Oseh, Baruch Ozer u'Mekayim, Baruch Mirachem al haaretz, Baruch Mirachem al habriot, Baruch Mishalem Sachar Tov Lireov, Baruch Chailod V'Kayom Lo Netzach, Baruch Podeh Umatzil, Baruch Shemo. The singular one who gives life to the world, the sovereign who is praised and glorified forever and ever. This is your great name. Baruch atah Adonai, sovereign, celebrated with songs of praise. Yachid chei olamim, melech mishubachim upavar, adei ad shemo hagadol, Baruch atah Adonai, melech mulabatish bachot. Excuse me, please. Turn to the Ashrei on page 136. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha Onyalucha Selom Ashreim Shekochalo Ashreim Shernoi Elohov Tilo LeDavid Aramim Cholahai HaMelech Bavrachashim Khalil Ambod B'chol Yom Avarchekom Balashim Khalil Ambod Gadol Arnoi Malol Meod V'ligdu Oto Ein Cheker Dor L'Dor Yishabach Masecha V'guratecha Yagidu Hadar Kavod Hodecha V'divrei Niflotecha Asicha V'ezuz Notecha Yomeru V'gedulatcha Asapreno Zecherav Tuvacha Yabiu V'tzit Katcha Yeranenu Chanun Rachum Aronoi Erech Alpaim Gadol Chesed Tov Aronoi Lakol V'chamav Al Kol Masav Yoduch Aronoi Kol Masecho V'chasidecha Yevarchucha Kavod Malchutcha Yomeru V'gavod Ratacha Yedaberu Lo dia livnei hadam gvurotav, v'kavod hadar malchutav, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, umem shaltecha b'chol dor v'ador. Somech Adonai l'chol hanoflim, v'zokef l'chol hakufim, enei chol elechi yesabero, Yaton noten lahem et ochlam bi'ito, Poteach et yadecha, umaspia l'chol charatzon, Tzadik Adonai b'chol dirachov, V'chasid b'chol ma'asav, Karov Adonai l'chol korov, L'chol ashir u'vemet, Ritzon re'ov ya'aseh, V'yet Shavatam Yishma v'Yoshiem, Shomer Adonai et kol oavav, Veit kol Shaim Yashmid, Tilat Adonai daber pi, V'varech kol basar, Shem Gachol Yalam Voed, V'anachnu nevarech Yah, Me'ata v'yad olam, Hallelujah. Turning to page 137, please. This psalm catches me every day. Looking at the lower two-thirds, there's a break between the first third and the lower two-thirds, if you will. And I want to look at this and study with you just a little bit, those lower two stanzas, you might say, or the lower large chunk. This is a psalm. It's a religious poem, originally sung, singing a religious poem. Bearing that in mind, blessed is the person whose help is Jacob's God, who looks with hope to Adonai, who created heaven and earth, the sea and all that is within it. So the first element is that God is identified as creator of the entire universe. Continuing. Adonai keeps faith forever. That's a character trait. Next part. God secures justice for the oppressed, provides food for the hungry, releases the bound from their chains, gives sight to the blind, strains those, that's backs, folks. Your back, when you get up one day and your back feels a little bit like that, which happens to me every once in a while, that's what we're talking about. Standing up straight. Straightens the backs whose are bent low, and love those who act justly. So the next part of God's character traits, not only creating the universe and being faithful, but having a relationship with individuals across the spectrum of their needs, who they are, where they are in their lives, in their own experiences. That's what this psalm is trying to talk about. That our connection with God does change as we change through our experiences. But it's also the same God, the one and only God, that created the entire universe. So are you and I able to see our own experiences when we're hungry, scared, alone, bent over, hopefully standing up, against the backdrop of the universe itself? Catches me every day. Adonai cares for the stranger, sustains the orphan and the widow, blocks the path of the wicked. Adonai shall reign forever. Your God, O Tzion, from generation to generation. That means our families. God's connected to our families as well. Praise God, and we all say, Hallelujah. Page 141. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Bekadsho, hallelujah, Bikiaozo, hallelujah, Vigorotov, hallelujah, Karogullo, hallelujah, Beteka Shofar, hallelujah, Benevel Vachinor, hallelujah, Betofu Machol, hallelujah, Bemini Biogov, hallelujah, Betzilz Leshma, hallelujah, Betzilz Letra, Kol Anshama Hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol Anshama Hallelujah, hallelujah. Yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, la 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 la. Kol Anshama Hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol Anshama Hallelujah, hallelujah. Please turn to page 142, the left-hand margin, the first stanza. Awakening to a new day. We began by reciting the Modeh or Moda'ani, which means I thank you in the singular. Now at the conclusion of Pisukei de Zimra, our collective awareness and connection to each other has been truly awakened. And so we can say, Modim anachnu lach. We thank you in the plural. We are thus ready for the formal call to prayer, the Borchu, to which we respond as a community. Page 145. Nishmat kol chaim tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu Baruch Haba Tefer. On page 147. Shochenon morom vekadosh shemo vechatov ranano tzadikim baronoi Laisharim Nova Tehillah Befi Yesharim Titalal Uvedivrei Tzadikim Titbarach Uvilshon Chasidim Titromam Uvekerev Kedoshim Titkadash Uvamakalot Rivavot Amcha Bet Yisrael Lodol lehalel lishabech lefael uramem lahader lebrach lalekales. I'll call the Reshua Batish Pachot David Ben Yishai Avdocha Meshichecha top of 148 Yishtabach Shimcha Lord Malkeinu Hoel HaMelech Hagadol VaKadosh Bashamayim uvaretz ki lecha noe Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu shir u'shvacha halel v'zimra ozu memshala netzach gedula u'gvura tehila v'tiferet Kiddusha u'malchut, brachot v'orot, me'atav yad olam. Baruch Adonai, Himel gadol v'tishpachot, el ha'odot Adonai niflot, ha'bocher b'shirei zimra, melech elchei olamim. Yitkadal v'yitkadash, shemei rabam. Yomadi Rachute Mechote, Bachayachon Yomechon, Ayerech Be Yisrael, Bagalot Bisman Kariv, Pimeru, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabam, Barach Lolam Olemayo. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitparvim v'yinaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei kedusha brechu le'elam min kol brachata v'shirata tishbachata v'nechemata damiram v'yom v'imro. Amen. Please rise. Baruch page 149, 150. Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach L'olam Voed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Yotzer over Choshech Oseh Shalom Ovarei et HaKol. Baruch Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, forming light and creating darkness, bringing harmony while creating all. And we're seated, turning now to page 153. This refers to the angels. It's the second stanza up from the bottom of the page. These are the angels. With a deafening sound, the Ophanim and other holy beings rise up opposite the Seraphim and proclaim their praise. Praise is Adonai's glory wherever God dwells. They offer adulation to God whom they bless. They chant songs and voice their praise to the sovereign, the living and enduring God. For God alone achieves victory, creates anew, masters war, sows righteousness, cultivates deliverance, effects healing, is praised with reverence, and is the author of wonders. Stop there. Victory, masters war, righteousness, deliverance, healing. In which realm does that take place? Victory, creation, war, righteousness. Deliverance means help, healing. In which realm do those events take place? The earthly realm. What do angels know of our experiences? They've never suffered loss, never been ill, never experienced a loss in war, never needed righteousness or victory. Why are angels described in this manner? It would make sense if people were described in this manner, but not angels. Maybe angels are trying to understand us. New twist on Kedusha. Not only are we trying to get up to that heavenly realm when we say Kadosh, Kadosh, in the Kedusha in just a minute, originating here, but maybe angels are trying to give us some kind of an understanding, gain some kind of an understanding, because God is connected to us in a way that not connected to angels. Or Chadash Hatzion Ta'ir V'nizkech Ulanu Mehera Le'oro Baruch Atarnai Yotzer Hamorot. The first paragraph on the English side, page 154. You have loved us deeply, Adonai, our God, and showered us with boundless compassion. Avinu Malkeinu, for the sake of our ancestors who trusted in you and to whom you taught the laws of life, so may you be gracious to us and instruct us. Kind Creator, have compassion for us. Open our hearts so that we may understand, and with love discern, hear, and study, observe, perform, and fulfill all the teachings of your Torah with love. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah. Attach our hearts to your mitzvot. Unify our hearts to love and revere your name so that we never lose hope. As we trust in your great, holy, awe-inspiring name, we will delight and rejoice in your deliverance. Vavienu, pardon me, l'shalom, gathering and tzitziot together. Vavienu l'shalom, me'arba kanfot haaretz. V'tolichenu kamemiot le'artzenu. Shuot atam. Nova charta mikolam v'lashon v'kerabtanu l'shimcha hagadol stelam bemet l'hodot l'cha ol yachercha ve'ahavam Baruch atah Adonai Habachar b'Yisrael me'ahavam Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Hashem Kavod Malchut Olam V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol mildecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom ha'levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha v'lechtecha v'derech v'shachbecha v'kumecha v'kishar tamlot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot ben enecha v'ktavtam al mezuzot veitecha u'visharecha. the middle of 156. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, Taber el bnei Yisrael v'marta lehem, v'yasu lahem tzitzit al kanfei vigdehem ledorotam, v'natno al tzitzit hakana pitil techelet, v'yalachem letzitzit, Uritem oto, uschartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, vasitem otam, lo taturo, acharei levavchem, v'acharei enechem, asher atem zonim achareihem, Laman tizkeru, vasitem et kol mitzvotai, v'item kedoshim leloechem, ani Elohechem, Asher Otzeiti etchem eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem leElohim, ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. On page 157, on the English side, the lower half of the page, you were always the help of our ancestors, a shield and deliverer for their descendants in every generation. You abide at the pinnacle of the universe. Your judgment and your righteousness extend to the ends of the earth. Blessed are the ones who attend to your mitzvot and place your teaching and words on their hearts. Truly you are the ruler of your people, Almighty Sovereign, who takes up their cause. Truly, you were at the beginning, and you will be at the end. Aside from you, we have no ruler who can redeem and deliver. The middle of page 158. Mi chamocha poelim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, no ratilot ol seifele, shira chadasha, shibchu geulim, l'shimcha safat hayam, yachad kulam, hotu v'michu v'yamro, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Tzur Yisrael, Kilma b'Yezrat Yisrael, Upadechinu mecha, Yehuda v'Yis. Gu aleinu Adonai tzvot shemo, Kadosh Yisrael. In a moment, the Amida on page 159, 160, 161, thereafter in silence, we remember that there are only 2-3 times that we actually bend and bow. In the ancient days, Israelites bowed often, but as time progressed, there was a concern that pagans who were bowing to trees and to sky and idols might think that Israelites bowed also to those same things. And so, because we're self-conscious, when we see this reference in the Mishnah and the Talmud, some of the traditions of bowing were curtailed. And the only established elements that remain are Borchu, which we just did a minute ago. And here at the beginning of the Amida, the first 2 brachot, we Baruch Atah. And then at the end of the Amida, that's the part that most people don't realize, at the end of the Modim, it's Tov Lodot. It's the blessing gratitude. We do a bend and a bow. And also during the Aleinu, whether it's the regular Aleinu throughout the entire year, or the Aleinu Hagadol on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Those are the only times we bend and bow. But I think there's a vestige of what used to be bending and bowing, and sometimes you see people moving a little bit, because when you get used to doing something, you keep on doing it. And not only that, but there's kind of a rhythm, and there's a feel when our bodies are moving, in addition to the sounds coming out of our mouths, and the ideas in our head, and what we're reading with our eyes. So our whole body becomes involved. And I mention this because it's been a while since I reminded us that at the beginning of the meeting we take 3 small steps backwards. So this is the practice session right here, and we'll start in just a minute. And you see the small print on page 159, and there are 6 Hebrew words. Guess what? 3 back and 3 forward, and we say Adonai Sifatai Tiftach, which means, oh God, open my mouth. Ufi Yagid Tilatecha, may my mouth speak words that are appropriate to you, O God. We're whispering this, but we're also taking these 3 small steps backwards and then forwards again, because we're getting ready for that first bend and bow. Our bodies are getting ready to assist our ideas and our thoughts and our feelings. So once more for review. Adonai Sifatai Tiftach Ufi Yagi Tilatech, and then we bend and bow. We're ready? Beginning aloud on page 159, 160, Kedusha's on 161, and thereafter a few minutes of silence. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu V'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Anara El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei HaKol V'Zocher Chasdei Avod V'Imahot U'Mevi Goel Livnei V'neihem L'man Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Ufoked U'Moshia U'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye Meitim Atah Rav L'Oshia Mechalkel Chayim B'Chesed Mechaye Meitim B'Rachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim Omatir Asurim Omekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Micho Mocho Bal Givurot Omidam Elach Melech Memit Umechaye Umat Meach Yeshua V'ne'eman Atah L'chayot Meitim Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayei HaMeitim Nekadesh et Shimcha ba'olam Kishem shemakdishim oto b'shmei marom Kakatuv al yad nevi'echa V'kara ze el ze v'yamar Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivot, Malach Haaretz Kvodo, Az B'kol Rash Gadol, Adir V'chazak, Mashmim Kol, Mitnasim Lomat Serafim, Lomatam Baruch Yomeru. Baruch Korem Mimkomo, Mimkomcha Malkeinu Tofia, V'timloch Aleinu, Kimechakim Anachnu Loch, Matai Timloch B'Tzion, B'Karov Yameinu Le'olam V'ed Tishkon, Titkara V'Titkarash B'toch Yerushalayim Ircha, L'dor V'dor Ol Netzach Netzachim, V'yeneinu Tirena, Malchutecha, Kadavar Hamor, B'shirei Ozecha, Al Yedei David Mashiach Tzidkecha. Yimloch Elam L'Hak Tzion, L'dor V'dor, Hallelujah. L'dor V'dor, Nagid Galecha, U'Lanetza Netzachim, Kedushatecha Nakdish, V'Shivchacha Eloheinu, Mipinu Le'amush Le'olam V'ed, Ki El Melech Gadol Kadosh Ata Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. Page 167, Kaddish Shalem. Yitkara b'kavash merabam. B'amal yirufim t'miru. Amen. Yehish merabam mevarach. Olam li'ol me'omayo. Yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitparach v'svei v'dadar v'resh me'dekudisha brechu. Le'el t'miru. Amen. Tikabel sotomaton l'chais v'kamish me'miru. Amen. Yes, Amen. Amen. Page 168. En kamacha Elohim Adonai, v'en kamasecha, malchutecha malchut, kol olamim memshaltecha, b'chol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimlach, le'olam va'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai Yevarech et Amo Shalom. Av harachamim heitiv avitzoncha et Zion. Timnechamot Yerushalayim. Timnechamot Yerushalayim. Kivecha levad batachnu, Melech el ram v'nisam, Adon olamim. Please rise. Excuse me. Vayehi ben so Aharon, Vayomer Moshe, Kom Adonai, Ve'afotzo oyevecha, Ve'anusu mesanecha, Mipanecha, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Orvar Adonai miroshalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah Torah. Torah. Lama Yisrael Begushatom. Ribbon Shalom, you are the creator of the universe, and these doors are now open. Assist me to open the doors of my mind to the beauties of the world in which I dwell. The skies, the mountains, the rivers, the majesty that you've created, including every single person on this earth. For each person is part of your creation. Allow me to open the doors of my mind to who they are and how they are. And a request now. Assist others in opening the doors of their mind to me, recognizing that we are different people with many different thoughts and perspectives. Allow the doors of all of our minds to become a bit more open, taking in the grandeur of the creation, which includes all of us. Be'an arachetz v'lishme kadisha yakira ana emar tushbechan ve'an arachetz v'lishme kadisha yakira Anna emar tushbechan Yehira avakadamach Tiftach libe v'yoraita V'tashli mish'alein t'libe V'liba d'chol amach Yisrael L'tavo l'chayin V'lishlam Amen. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonai Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai Tin Ramama Shmo Yachtov. Ha Adonai Hagedula Hagavora Vatiferet Behanetzach Behahod Kechol Bashamayim Varet Kechol Bashamayim Varet L'cha Adonai Hamamlacha V'aminase L'chol Rosh Romemo Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachava L'hadam Raglav Kadoshu Romemo Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachava Lehar Kodsho Hikadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Thank you, Daniel. May I call up Shade for 2 Leahs today? Cool. Thank you. We are seated. Thank you, Daniel. Where's my... There it is. The Torah reading for today is named Ki Tavo, and we will begin reading on page 1146, in the Torah. Yes, page 1146. A reminder that most of the book of Devarim, and we're coming to a close in just a little while, is really just a very long speech. 3 sub-speeches attached to each other. It's really a very long speech. And Moses is speaking to the people of Israel as a reminder of their history, specifically focusing on the history since the time of the Exodus, the journey to Mount Sinai, and then traveling throughout the wilderness to this point, as a reminder, you might say even an impetus, to focus their identities and their behavior in the future, because they'll be crossing over at passport control in just a little while. Moses will die. Joshua will take them in through passport control, and they'll settle, and all will be well and wonderful, and there'll never be any problems again for the entire Jewish people. Correct? We all know that. That's what's in Moshe's mind right now, and he's saying, by the way, don't forget, by the way, don't forget, by the way, remember. He's been their leader now for 40 years, and that is referenced in one of the last aliyahs of this parsha. And I wonder what it's like for anybody who's been in a position of influence and connectedness to a community over a span of 40 years, as he or she realizes that soon that will come to a conclusion. What would one say and how would one say it? And it makes sense that there'd be, oh, by the way, and don't forget, and please remember, and you really need to do this, on and on. So now we're on page 1146, and it's verse number 11. Shemer Kayap, V'yasur V'yasur Inkan Koyamod, Shet Ben Dana Levi Ve Ahuva, Shon, Proshusato, V'yatam Vekim Hechem, Chamchem, Hayom. Hold on 1 second, sir. 1 second. This is an aliyah with a number of different components. So allow me just to share a thought, if you will. At 1146, it's verse number 11. And Moses is instructing the people that when you go into the promised land, under Joshua's leadership, you're going to come to 2 mountains. And 6 of y'all tribes will be on this mountain, Eval, and 6 of y'all tribes will be on this mountain, Gerizim. And there's going to be an oral proclamation or declaration, a reminder of these are the core elements that you as a community have to observe in your daily life. And there's not that much given to Shabbos, a little bit to observances. The main element is don't do idol worship, but also a lot of, we would say, humanitarian or human-based requirements in terms of your basic daily behavior. These are the things that you must do, and if you don't do it, arur, you will be cursed. And this is described later in the book of Joshua as having taken place. And that's the first little scene here. It's this little paragraph, 1146 verses 11, 12, 13. And then the description of the curses is found before us as we move on onto page 1148 and 1149. And at the end of 1149, after the arur, which is, you'll be cursed if you do this, you'll be cursed if you do that, and everybody shouts, Amen, Baruch atah, by the way, but if you do this, you'll be blessed. Which is a nice little way of ending off that little section, because no one wants to be described as being cursed. That's kind of uncomfortable and discomforting, you might say. But I'm just, in my mind, picturing tens of thousands of people on one mountainside and tens or more thousands of people on another mountainside, and the Levim shouting out, Arur maskei iver b'derech, and people saying, Amen! I mean, just echoing across the mountains and the valleys, and we don't know exactly, I don't know if they rushed this or not. Maybe they took a few minutes. I mean, getting 50, 80, 100,000 people onto one mountain and getting ready and, parking the animals in the parking lot and getting the food and the popcorn ready to go. I mean, it's going to take a while to get this going, but it must have been an absolute enormous spectacle. And Eval and Gerizim have this, you might say, either fame or notoriety for being the locus of this spectacle, of this drama. Functionally nowadays, most typical Jews don't go to Eval and Gerizim because Eval and Gerizim are located not too far from Nablus, which is an area that typical Jewish tourists don't visit. You could if you wanted to. It's in the West Bank or the Palestinian territories, depending upon your vocabulary that you choose to use. So you could go there. I was only there once. On subsequent trips, I have not been to that area because I think I like to know where I'm going, and I know where I want to go and where I don't want to go. But we could go there, and it's a very important point because it's mentioned in this Torah reading. It's mentioned again in the book of Joshua. So it's a very important part of our Jewish history. What does it mean when you walk into a place and you have a choice? How will you live? Are you going to live in a cursed manner? Or are you going to live in a blessed manner? And the entire community, everybody, is witnessing that declaration and that choice that each one of us is making. That's this scene. Vaitzav. Baruch Hu.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Hanayim Baruch Olam
Baruch
V'ed.
Olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher B'Karban Mikol Ha'amim V'Natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai
Yishmor.
Torah.
Amen. Vayetza Moshe b'mu lemor ele yamdu levarechatam al har grizim bo'ovrchem et hayarden Shimon v'Levi v'Yehuda v'Yisachar v'Yosef v'Binyamin v'yamdu al haklala b'har Eval Ruvain Gad v'Asher Uzvulun Dan v'Naftali v'nu alvim b'amru el kol ish Yisrael kol ram Arur ha'ish asher yasef esol maseka Tovaranoi masei charash v'sam basater vanu kolam v'amru Amen. Arur maklei avivim over kolam Amen. Arur masig gvurehu v'amar kolam Amen. Aror maske iver b'derach v'amar kolam. Amen. Aror ma'atem mishvah ger yotom v'amanav v'amar kolam. Amen. Aror shochevim eshed aviv ki gila knaf aviv v'amar kolam. Amen. Aror shochevim kol behemav v'amar kolam. Amen. Arur shochevim achoto bat aviv ubat imo v'amar kolam. Amen. Arur shochevim chotanto v'amar kolam. Amen. Arur makereu v'asateh v'amar kolam. Amen. Arur lokeh shochal lakot nevesh dam laki v'amar kolam. Amen. Arur asher lo yakim divrei Torah zot lasot otam v'amar kolam. Amen. V'yom shmo tishma b'kol anolecha lishmor lasot et kol mitzvotav asher anochi mitzavcha hayom utancha anolecha elyon kol goyei haaretz ovo alecha kol habrachot haele v'sigucha ki tishma b'kol anolecha Baruch atah ba'ir u'baruch atah Basadeh.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Temet Chayei Olam Nata B'Tocheinu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Shkoyach, man. Yeah, that's it. Stand up, next one. Yamod Sheikh ben Alevi ve'ahuva Levi. And now we're on page 1149, verses 4, 5, 6. Page 1149, verse 4, 5, 6. And of course, I think we all know what the words Baruch Atah mean. I sure hope so. Baruch means blessed, Atah is you, blessed are you. And this is referring to, again, that echoing, potentially hundreds of thousands of people in these mountains shouting out, Amen! Yes, it's great. We believe. Yes, we're going to live our daily lives, and we're not going to steal land from people who don't know that we're a neighbor moving a marking post. We're not going to take advantage of a woman who is a widow. We're not going to take advantage of a young teenager. We're not going to take advantage of people who own livestock and the animals drift away. We're not going to take advantage of on and on and on and on and on and on. And we all shout Amen and Baruch HaBaruch. And now look at, it's verse number 6. Baruch atah b'lecha, blessed are you, literally, in your entering, in your coming in. Uvrach atah b'tzitecha, and blessed are you in your exiting, as you enter and as you exit. And I've seen some beautiful handiwork. Occasionally, a gifted mezuzah artist will inscribe this phrase on a mezuzah. Think about it. As you're walking in and out of your door, take hold of that idea that the mezuzah box itself is calling out to you a desire that each one of us crossing that threshold is going to be blessed. Isn't that a lovely idea? comes from this part of the Torah reading. Baruch Pri. Baruch Hanai Baruch Olam Bo'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'charban mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Baruch Pri v'necha ufri almatcha ufri v'necha shkar l'fek v'shtorotzonecha Baruch tanacha mishar techa Baruch atah b'voecha u'baruch atah b'tzeitecha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah temet v'chayei olam nitan b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shkoyach, man. I'm glad you're here. Yeah. Oh, so Seth just mentioned something that when he was thinking about the word mezuzah, is there a name, God as gatekeeper? Shaddai. Now, Shaddai means two things, and often you see Shaddai on a mezuzah box. Shaddai means two things. Number one, as a name, Shaddai means the Almighty. And we know that because it's found in Breshit and Genesis and a few other places as well. So it means the Almighty. But there's also a pun at work because Jewish people like playing puns. We love word games, especially Hebrew and letters. And so Shaddai could be viewed as an abbreviation for the guardian of the doors of Israel. Shomer Delatot Yisrael. Playful. What that really means is that we already have the tradition of putting Shaddai on the doorpost. And once it was up there, people looked at the letters Shin, Daled, Yud, and discerned or superimposed upon it that idea that God is the guardian of the doorpost of Israel, which is a nice idea, lovely idea. So, Michael Hill, may I call you up? Yamo, Michael Ben. Linda. Levorach Ben. Your mom's name Linda? Haile Alishlishi. Thank you, Dan. Okay, that's it. So we're now on page 1149, verse number 7. And you see here, this is the, you might say, the outgrowth of the positive blessings of fulfilling daily human behaviors. And it continues on to the top of page 1150. You take your towel in. Here, put your towels right there.
Baruch atah Adonai habarach.
Baruch Hanai Baruch Olam Bo'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'charban mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai
Kushmo.
noten haTorah.
Amen. Yitain Adonai et ohevecha k'mimolecha nigafim b'fanecha b'derecha chad yetzeu elecha v'shiva drachim yanusu l'fanecha yitzav Adonai otcha et habracha b'samecha v'chol mishlaketcha u'bracha b'aretz asher nelecha noten loch yikimcha Adonai l'olam kadosh kasher nishpa lecha ki tishmor mitzvat Adonai lecha v'olachta b'drachav ru kol amei aretz ki shem Adonai nikra lecha v'ru mimeka v'otircha Adonai l'tova b'fri v'necha v'fri v'emtecha v'fri amotecha al adama shenishma v'techa leloch Yiftach Adonai lecha et otoro hatov et hashamayim l'teid mitar tzachabito uvarech et kol מעשה ידיך, וביטה גויים רבים ואתה לא תלווה.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Blessings, man. You stand here, blessings. Dvor, may I call you up? Tamo Dvor ba Yosef Tavale Ale. Revi.
Micah quote from the Torah when he said, if you follow his laws and walk in his ways, that famous line,
Ahavas Chesed?
yeah,
Could be. You're so Dan's pointing out something interesting. Dan's pointing out, and we see this phrase, and it's thank you, Daniel. It's verse number 9. So Dan pointed out verse number 9 that Moses is saying, "You shall walk in God's ways," and Dan's wondering if that's perhaps the origination point for the prophet Micah, who said, "Walk in the ways of God." And I have no idea. Maybe, could be, but there's a very powerful image. I mean, God doesn't have any feet, obviously, but what does it mean to walk in the ways of God? To walk in the ways of God. What does that mean? How do you feel when you hear that? You are walking in the ways of God. How does that make you feel? Scared. Why, Murray? How about sometimes? How about sometimes? Can you walk sometimes? Are you scared walking sometimes in God's way? Okay. He says no. How do you feel walking? Katie, how do you feel? Challenged. Scared. Challenged. How would you feel walking in the ways of God?
Like I had a purpose.
Purpose. Scared, challenged, have a purpose. That's cool. What else? How would you feel walking in the ways of God? Blessed. Busy. Blessed and busy. This is the BB walk. Blessed and busy. Challenged, scared. Cool. Seeing a change. Your behavior, your touch makes a change in the world around you. Beautiful. Righteous. So, thinking about what you just shared right now, it makes sense that perhaps the prophet Micah made up that phrase, maybe influenced by this idea. So, Micah says, what does God want of you, O person? To do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Walk humbly with your God. To do justice, love mercy. Sorry, that's the Old English translation I grew up with. To do justice, love chesed. It's the name of our shul, Ahavas Chesed. Micah says, what does God want? To do justice, to love chesed, and to walk humbly with your God. So, righteous, justice. So, I understand the last part of your question, but not exactly the first part, because there's no upper and lower case in Hebrew. So, but basing my, you're thinking about the last part of your question, then it's your God individually. So each one of us as an individual has a choice to connect with God. It's Elohim, Elohecha. So Richard has an understanding of Elohim, and Yvonne does, and Joe does, and I do, and Devorah does, and each one of us has an understanding of God. So how does that resonate inside oneself when we're told in the prophet, the book of Micah, do justice, love chesed, and walk humbly with your God. I'm going to guess Zechariah, but I can't remember for sure. Zechariah Zechariah talks about different nations in a couple of different ways. But at the very end of his book, which is about chapter 14, he talks about how people are all going to come together. But I can't remember if it's in the earlier. That's why I'm jumping to the conclusion that it's Zechariah, because of chapter 14. We also have to remember something else, that when Moses is making a speech in the end of Deuteronomy, it's coming out of his experience addressed to the people of Israel. And that experience does not have to conform with other messages taught in other parts of Nach, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, prophets and writings. We have many different tones scattered throughout the Hebrew Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible. And some are universalistic, and some are very, very specifically particularistic. And I'm going to leave it at that. Which Leah are we on? Thank you. Today, I didn't even make it to number 5, Deborah. I'm sorry about that. I have to back up the Yiftach because of the paragraph. Yiftach Hashem L'cha. Yiftach Hashem L'cha. One second. Here it is, Yiftach. There it is, Yiftach. Thank you. Baruch Baruch Lamboed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai
Shmo.
noten haTorah.
Amen. Yiftach Adonai lecha totoro hatov v'tishmayim l'tet matar tzcha b'tov arecha kol maseh yadecha v'ilvita goyim rabim v'talo tilveh untancha Hashem l'rosh v'lo l'zanav v'yita rak l'mala v'lo tiyeh l'mata ki tishma el mitzvot Adonai lecha asher nechim etzavcha hayom lishmor לעשות לא תסור מכל הדברים אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם היום ימין ושמאל לא ללכת אחרי אלוהים אחרים לעובדם.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת בחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. If you will look for a moment at verse number 13, and this is on my mind for two different reasons. It's verse number 13. God will make you the head and not the tail. And in Israel, this is a fairly common phrase, L'rosh v'lo lefanav, which means succeed. You don't want to, you want to be the valedictorian, right? You don't want to be the guy at the very end of the line. You want to be Rosh, you know the word Rosh, Zanav is tail. You want to be a Rosh, not a Zanav. So it comes from the Torah. And you want to be, you're at the top, da 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 da, you're at the top. Remember, Joe, you know that song, right? Well, not really, not the way I sing it, but anyway, it says, "Vayita rak lamala v'lo tiyeh lamata." You want to be up at the top. You want to succeed and not fail. You want to accomplish and achieve and not yield in a sense of powerlessness. And so if you accomplish all these behaviors in a certain way, you're going to achieve, succeed, and flourish. And the other reason that I remember this is that my papa, Alav Shalom, my mom's dad, who grew up in Russia, used to eat a fish. And Grandma would bring him a fish, and I would watch that I'd leave the kitchen. If I could, I just wouldn't stop looking. But he would eat, I mean, everything. And maybe it comes from growing up as a poor Russian, but some of us know those relatives of ours who ate everything. I mean, he ate the whole fish. And there's an expression at Rosh Hashanah time, you should be at the head and not the tail. And just as Ashkenazim often eat challah dipped in honey or apples dipped in honey, there is an Ashkenazi tradition of putting a fish head on the Rosh Hashanah table to represent being at the top, at the head, and it's based upon this phrase. And fish are an artistic motif within Jewish tradition. Fish have lots of offspring, so having a fish is a sign of blessing and growth and progeny and so on. So when I read this phrase, number one, I think of my papa eating that fish, which I couldn't do, and number two, I think about we're approaching Rosh Hashanah, and so maybe in a certain way, this passage here, which Devorah just had in her Aliyah, is helping us to set the stage for Rosh Hashanah. And hopefully we're planning our tables, and we'll have apples and honey and bread. And if you want to put a fish head, you can. And some Mizrahi Jews put a sheep head on the table for the same reason. I don't know if they eat it or not, but it's in the books. So, but anyway. Bearing that in mind, I'm now going to exercise a prerogative. This next Aliyah, which is on page 1150, verse number 15, on to page 1152, 1153, 1154, 1155, 1156, is a long Aliyah. And there's a tradition that it be read quickly and whispered. And you have the pages before you, and you can kind of read along and skim along. And I would suggest politely that you just skim. Don't read the entire passage. This is one of the two times, right, Dan, that we don't really talk a whole lot about what's in this passage. And I'm going to read an excerpt of it from my own Aliyah. This is the downside. This is the curse. This is the declaration from Moses on behalf of God that if you don't do the right thing, all these bad things are going to happen to you. And it's graphic. So by the way, I never teach this to any of our Sunday school kids, and I barely talk about it with our adults because it's deeply disturbing. I'm going to leave it at that. And so the pages are before you. Again, if you want to skim, perhaps glance at the commentary, and that's going to be on pages 1151 through 5. And I'm going to say a blessing, and I'm going to start on page 1156, verse 64 for a little bit. Yes, please, Marie. Are you speaking about an artist? That's an interesting question. I think my first response would be that 3,000 years ago, people probably did not have a whole lot of spare cash. The economy was a limited one. So for an average peasant to want to bring something into his own home meant he had to take some of his income and pay it to a craftsman for the purposes of beautifying the home. And if you've got very limited money, are you going to buy something that's, pardon me, only artistic, or is it going to have some other kind of a function? And if I'm, and I have no idea if I'm right, I'm kind of guessing, but if you're going to spend your limited resources on a piece of art, I think it's going to be more than just decorative. I think it would be something that would be hopefully decorative in the eyes of the purchaser, but also some kind of power. And if my train of thought is correct or accurate, then that's the problem. That an Israelite peasant would take some money and buy something that's going to be artistic but also have power. Because if an object has power on the universe, that means that that Israelite peasant is drifting away from belief in God. That's my first response. And I'm not sure if I have a second response yet. Let me think about it a little more. Questions about photographs. So again, in our modern time period, where our society is such that people have more disposable income, then people can afford a luxury known as art for the sake of the uplift of the spirit. Who blew that one, didn't I? Uplift of the spirit. Whoo! Verging on worship right there. See that? I blew that one, right? So there we go. That's interesting. So what are we looking for? If we are trying to uplift our spirit, what does that mean? Is the aesthetic, which is within us, separate from having a window towards divinity? Okay, if it is, if there's an aesthetic sense to be appreciated, which is unrelated to worship, we'll call it, then that opens a whole new door. And that's an interesting door to talk about. Perhaps. Perhaps. Mm-hmm. So that's the year, 2022, 5783 in next week, 5783. But again, I think I would be safe in arguing going back 3,000 years that would not have been the case. I think the cultural milieu would have been to such an extent that items in the home which were decorative had a purpose. And the purpose was not necessarily only aesthetic, but it was worshipful, especially since the Israelites are walking into Canaanite territory. And every once in a while, if you read any given newspaper that talks about or brings a story to bear of archaeological discoveries, you'll learn that there are constantly figurines being discovered in archaeological excavations in Israel, constantly. And so when a figurine is discovered and it's 2,700 years old, and it's of a shapely woman, what's the purpose for that? Is it only artistic? I mean, maybe. We probably think that's probably connected to a fertility cult, right? So, and these figurines are literally just sometimes 2, 3, 4 inches high. They're this big between my fingers. They're the size of this, perhaps, literally. But I mean, that's what this is all talking about. Moses is saying you can't do what the other people are doing. Law of Dam, Eitzva Evan, because if you worship those items, you're going to be just like the Canaanites. You have to stay away. So that's probably the reason, or that I think that would be the reason or the cause by which they're developed within our mindset 3,000 and 2,000 years ago and coming down to the generations of steer clear of artwork. And I mean, you've read Asher Lev, right? My name is Asher Lev. You know what we're talking about here. And to what extent is modern Jewish art going to withstand the strictures of these kinds of statements in the Torah? And that's a big issue, Michael. That's a good point. Steer clear of art, because art can be detached from, like you said, Richard, a higher calling, right? If it's an aesthetic, which is a higher calling, but it's not within the context of a deity or associated with a deity, then that's something else. Okay, so that's a new challenge. Okay, what if there's a piece of art in some way that uplifts an individual Jew and brings him or her closer to God, but other people are reluctant to embrace a given piece of artwork? Then who becomes the referee? So that, I mean, it's easier for me as a knee-jerk reaction to say music is not a problem or less of a problem, and I'll tell you why. Because I've been heavily influenced in my study and my training by what's called the second and third of the Big Ten Commandments. Don't build something and don't bow down to it. That's front and center in our brains, which is in the book of Exodus, book of Deuteronomy, and in a certain way refracted through this very long passage as well. It doesn't say don't listen to of a certain frequency. It doesn't say that in the Torah. So that's easier for me to address right away. I'm talking way too long. I gotta skip. Okay, we're going to. I'm ending on the Hefitzcha. I'm starting to have it. I gotta find the Hefitzcha. What did I have Hefitzcha? What is it? There it is. Okay. Baruch hu et Adonai Baruch. Baruch Hashem Baruch Olam Boed Baruch Adonai Baruch Asher Bachar B'nim Kol Minaton Torah Nitein Torah. V'fitzcha Adonai b'chol amim miktzei haaretz v'gatzei haaretz v'amrata Hashem elim echarim. Asher yadata ta v'avotecha eitz v'aven v'gimahem lo tergiv lo yilem enoch lecha v'reglecha v'natan Adonai lecha sham lev ragas v'chayon neinaim v'davon nafesh v'chayu chayecha tluim lecha mineged ופקדת לילה ויומם ולא תאמין בחייך בבוקר תאמר מי ייתן ערב ובערב תאמר מי ייתן בוקר מפחד לבבך אשר תפחד וממר עיניך אשר תירא ושבך אדוני מצרים בניות בדרך אשר אמרתי לך לא תוסיף עוד לראותה והתמכרתם שמלוי ואכל עבדים ולשפחות ואין קונה אלא דברי הברית אשר תברנו את משה לכרות את בני ישראל בארץ מואב מלבד הברית אשר כרת אותם בחורב. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו את חיי ובתורנו נותן התורה. Thank you for your understanding. And now we're on page 1158. Shishi. There we go. Shishi. Cindy, would you like an aliyah? Tamod. What's your name? Tamod, Rivka Bat Leiki Le Shishi. Thank you. Tell us what is right there.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Rachalam Boed.
Baruch Adonai
Hambarach Le'olam Boed. Hambarach Le'olam Boed. Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam.
Asher
Asher
bachar
bachar
banu
banu
mikol
mikol
ha'amim.
ha'amim. Natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai
B'shmo.
noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayikra Moshe el kol Yisrael v'yamar alehem atem ritem et kol asher asanu elenechem eretz Mitzrayim lefaro l'chol avadav v'chol artzo hamasot hagdolot asher ru einecha ha'otot v'hamoftim hagdolim hem v'natan Adonai lachem lev ladat v'einayim la'erot v'osnayim lishmoa ad hayom hazeh v'lechetchem 40 shana b'midbar lo v'alu salmotechem elechem v'nachal lo v'asa me'al raglecha lechem lo v'achaltem v'yayin v'shechar lo shetitem l'man tedu ki ani Adonai Elohechem.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata v'tochanu. Baruch atah Adonai
B'shmo.
noten haTorah.
Amen. Shkayach. You're welcome. I'm going to step here for a second. Murray, would you like Aliyah? Tamod, Moshe ben Yona v'chana le Shvi. We're on page 1159, verse number 6.
Baruch et Adonai habarach.
Baruch Adonai Rachalam Boed.
Baruch Adonai habarach le'elam ba'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'notan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. ותבואו אל המקום הזה, ויצא סיחון אל חשבון, ואל מלך הבשן, לקראתנו למלחמה ונקם. וניקח את ארצם, וניתנה לנחלה, לא רבני ולגדי, חצי שבט המנשי, ושמרתם את דברי הברית הזאת, ועשיתם אותם למען תשכילו את כל אשר תעשון.
Baruch atah Adonai
Shalom.
Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tzolkenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shkoyach, man.
Thank you.
Yitgada Shemei Rabbah. B'chayechon v'yomechon u'chayedecho Beit Yisrael. Danny, need you. Bagala u'v'zman kariv v'imiru. Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabbah mevarach Olam u'yolmei olmayo yitbarach. Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitbarach, Yinaseh, Yithadar, Yitale, Yitala, Shemed Kudisha, Brichu, Leila, Mekabachata, Beshirata, Tushbechata, Venechemata, Da'amiran Ba'olma, Vimeru, Amen. And Mishaberach for our loved ones. And if you know someone's name, please mention this person's name at this time. Adam left court, Yenta bat Gisha, Avram Yehuda ben Gisha, Chanasar bat Peshalea, Elalea bat Aviva, LaClaudia Thomas, David Shlomo ben Tobanacham, Navaronit bat Eliza, Tom McCarthy, Karniah Chaya bat Tharimenu, Pat Cockrell, Sprinter bat Bashi, Yudah ben Sarimenu, Ruth bat Sarimenu, Jonathan Mathis, Natalie Mathis, Tom Bastoni, Wendy Fassman, Chaya Esther bat Nechama, George Patinos, Diane Sizemore, Yaakov Avram and Chaya Chana, Nasser Leben Blanche, Gadiel Galman Sarimenu, Rivka bat Kayla, Shulamas bat Kayla, Steve Holmes, Avi Moshe ben Menuchana, Rivka bat Chavshalivsha, Yudas bas Laverne, Shmuel Shimon ben Eliyahu, Monica Knight, Monica Linton, Yaakov ben Leora, Billy Singleton, Linda bat Mina, Laura Barron, Vic Kulum, Shani Scream, Meherov, Hashbar Vanar, Amen. For you, O God, have blessed our mothers and our fathers. And in the same way that you blessed and touched our mothers and fathers with uplift and faith, inspiring love and hope, bring forth hope, faith, love, promise, and optimism within all those who are ill, all those who are suffering. Let that touch which fashioned the universe touch each and every person whom we remember this day and known only to you. Let your presence, which fills the universe and beyond, be close at hand, so that those might stand and walk fresh and anew forward in the week ahead. May hope be restored. May anxiety and fear lessen. May calm be within the heart. And may shalom be felt. And we all say, Amen. I want to study one little section of the Haftorah. I know what time it is, and I want to move a little quickly. So, if you will, turn to page 1161, because I want you to see the title or the headline, you might say. And we're going to move to 1163 in a moment, but Isaiah has magnificent poetry. And this passage, which is, obviously we're now just about a week away from Rosh Hashanah, is entitled the Sixth Haftorah of Consolation. We are moving further and further away from the loss, the catastrophe, which was Tisha B'Av, and we're looking into a new world, a world of hope and of safety and security And that's what Isaiah is trying to provide. And now, if you look at page 1163, verse number 19, no longer shall you need the sun for light by day, nor the shining of the moon for radiance at night. For God shall be your light everlasting. Your God shall be your glory. And thinking about Richard's question before, it's the individual. It's speaking to you, your individual, one person at a time. Isaiah is saying, take hold with confidence of having a relationship with something far beyond your understanding. And it's as close as you and your own mind will allow it to be. It's as close as you and your own mind will allow God to be. And that can apply to us today. For we see our world as challenging and frightening, and there are moments of destruction and loss. And we need uplift and light. God is as close as you in your mind allow it to be. We rise for Hagba and Glila. America, would you come forward for Hagba, please? Katie, will you please dress the Torah? Bezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe livnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai biyad Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Mary, do you want to put her in? Thank you very much. Thank you. On the top of page 184, the last three lines, Eitz Chaim. Eitz Chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'tomcheha Meushar deracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu, Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Mary, please close the curtains and the doors. We remain standing, turning to page 205 for the Aleinu. Thank you. Page 205, Aleinu. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu goye aratzot, velo samanu kimishpachot adamam, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, V'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu noteh shamayim v'yosed haaretz u'moshav yekaro b'shamayim imal u'shchinatu zo begavei meromim hu Eloheinu ein od emet malkeinu evesulato kakatu b'torato v'yadata yom v'ashevota el levavecha ki Adonai hu Elohim Bashamayim imal v'al haaretz mitachat ein od. Kakatu b'toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed ne'emar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz v'yom hahu yihye Adonai echad u'shema echad. In a moment, the mourner's Kaddish found on page 207. Oh, good. You found it. In a moment, the mourner's Kaddish found page 207. And the Shabbat we remember with great love. Bel Gutel, Harry Schreibman, Jacob H. Zuckerman, Abraham Stein, Aaron Jaffa, Sanford Polanski, Jacob Koffler, Bertha Plotka, Martin Dreyfus, Bruce David Lubell, Les Kramer, and Mitchell. Are there any other names to mention today? Perhaps those at home have a name to share as well. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba. Amen. Be'olma divara chirute v'yamlich malchute b'chaye chon v'yome chon v'chaye techol beit Yisrael ba'agala v'bizman kariv v'imeru. Amen. Yehi shmei rabba mivarach la'olam olalmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shmei dekudesha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiron ba'olma v'yimeru. Amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim Oleinu Yal Kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Oseh Shalom b'mromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Oleinu Yal Kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. We extend our prayers, we extend our love and our hope to all those who are marking grief at this time. Reminders, the big reminder is that, tonight we're changing the Torah covers. Even the Torahs are getting gussied up in honor of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. What does that say to us? So, brief service tonight, Slichas, 7:30 to 8:30, and the whole calendar for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is out there, and we will continue to send it out on our emails. If you have any questions, contact me. Monday is Tanakh, Tuesday is Hebrew and Spirit, and I think that's it for right now. Besides, don't forget the sisterhood tea. Yes. Oh, and if you're not getting any emails, contact us. We have had a couple of wrinkles with some of our technical connections. So if you've not been getting emails, contact me, us, including hopefully those of you out there on the screen. My email has had some issues with the front office, and so we now have a new email address. We're trying to get my email up and running again. So let us know. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to conclude with Yigdal on page number 62. Dan, I've got a favor to ask. May we do a different melody, a new melody for Yigdal? We're on page 62. No, that's Rosh Hashanah. That's Rosh Hashanah. That's next week. There's a reason. Yadai da 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 yadai da 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 yada da 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 yadai da 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 yadai da 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 yadai da 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 yadai da 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 yadai da 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 Yigdal Elohim Chai v'yishtabach Nimtza v'yeneit el mitziuto echad v'yen yachid keyichudo Ne'lam v'gam ein sof la'achduto Ein lo demot haguf v'yeno guf Lo na'aroch elav kedushato Kadmon l'chol davar asher nivra Rishon v'en reshit l'reshito Hino adon olam v'chol notzar Yoreh gedulato u'malchuto Shefa nevuato nitano El anshe segulato v'tifarto Lo kam b'Yisrael kamoshe Od navi umabit et tmunato Toratem et natan liyamo el Hayad nevi'o neman beito Lo yachal lifael v'lo yamir dato Leolamim lezulato Tzofev yodea sitarenu Mabit b'sof davar b'kadmato Gomel ish chesed kamifalo Noten l'rosh hara karishato Yishlach l'kit haymin meshichenu Litot mechagiket Yeshuato Meitim yachayel berov chasto Baruch adei shem tilato Meitim yachayel berov chasto Baruch adei shem tilato Yadai da 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 Yadai da 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 Yadai da 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 Yadai da 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 da. Good Shabbos. Baruch Hatiyi. Good Shabbos. Shabbos. Exactly right. Exactly right. Good Shabbos until we see each other again. Litrod, hopefully soon. Slichas tonight at 7:30, not being streamed. So if you want to join us for Slichas, please come into the building. Looking forward to seeing you Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur time. Good Shabbos. May you know that you were